here's an update on what I have had go on. Since my last recording about my family situation, where my son or my mother filed for custody of my child at a time where I needed my parents most. You know, he had just become a teenager and he's starting to do the rebellion thing. And anyway, so we had that. I had a really hard time with life afterward. You know, I raised this child on my own from 9 months old to 14 years. And he's, you know, we live in our house together, and we had a great relationship. I mean, we were inseparable. And that was my child, you know. I was very proud of him. I always considered myself his father before I considered myself just me, so to speak. So that's how I identified myself, I should say. So anyways, I had such a problem with that coping that I suffered severe depression. I mean, I literally lost the value of life itself. It was really bad. You know, I've got a therapist, and I had been seeing the therapist, and she told me at one point, she's like, wow, you know, you check all the boxes for suicide, potential suicide. I said, wow. You know, my age, being in my mid-40s, white male, unmarried, there's, well, just those factors alone, those are stats that I guess people in my statistical bracket, if you will, are more prone to taking their own lives. So I'm like, yeah, that's not me. Well, it certainly was me after my mother in court lied to take my child away from me. When she said, like, I wouldn't feed him, or I made exotic foods and I wouldn't let him eat anything other than that, so he would go hungry. I mean, just insanely bullshit stuff. And the funny thing is, you know, she did that, I guess, so she would consider it not lying, because I don't know if he would have even mentioned that or came up with that. I think she came up with that on her own, with her and her attorney, because I don't think Chase would ever have said that to her. But Chase did say he was being abused and all this other nonsense. That started when I, you know, was taking his PlayStation away and his phone away when he was disrespectful, or as an incentive for him to start doing better in school. He was failing and just not even doing homework and lying about it. So instead of my family helping me, you know, to work with him, they jumped on the opportunity. It's my mother, primarily, and the father, he does whatever she says. So she drove that, and she filed for custody, and she lied her ass off to get him to stay with her, and of course he wanted to live with her. I remember when I was my age, I told my parents I hated them. You know, they used to whip me with a belt, though. No one came and told them that they were abusing me. You know, and I never beat my son. I've spanked him, but never beat him. Anyway, so back to where I was. I didn't want to live anymore. I mean, I felt like I could survive it, but I actually couldn't. I crashed pretty hard, and about a week in, I just stopped taking care of myself completely. Didn't stop going to work. And my company I work for is wonderful. They were much more my family than my family was. So I woke up one morning and I had planned to take my life that day. Because what did I have? My son hates me now. I don't have a family. My mom, you know, basically told the entire world that I'm a piece of shit dad, even though, you know, everyone else who's involved in my home knows that I live for my son. And he's got a bit of an ego and an attitude, you know? I get it. But that's no reason for them to take his side. They took the child's side, the teenager side, over the parent. But I know my mother really wanted him for a long time. You know, she would have loved to have had him. But I had him, and, you know, I'm proud of what I've done with him. I love my son. So once that was taken from me, that was it. I made a decision there, which I didn't stick with, thank goodness. I wound up calling my therapist. I usually see her in Virginia Beach. She happened to be working in Newport News that day, but she's like, whenever something comes up and you feel like you need to, call me, or make an appointment. So I did. I made an appointment in Newport News. On my way there, I did call the suicide prevention hotline, which I encourage anyone who's going through traumatic events to do. With me being abandoned by my entire family and not really being aggressive out there getting friends and hanging out with the fellas, so to speak, because I'm a single dad and my son was a priority over friendships and hanging out. I didn't go to the clubs and bars, none of that stuff. So I didn't have anyone there when my family deserted me and took my baby. So having someone on the other side of the phone was helpful. And I drove to Newport News, and for about 20 minutes on the way, I spoke with, the operator on the other side of the phone. And usually the people there have experienced traumatic events, and they really want to help. So they just basically are sending out, they're lending an ear. They're giving, an outlet for you. And I highly recommend you take advantage of that outlet if you ever feel like I felt, where you wanted to give up on life. So I wound up seeing my therapist, and she was like, asked the routine questions. Did you have plans? Yes. Or did you think about suicide? Yes. Did you have plans? Yes. Which for me, I never had plans, but I had thought about it before. I think everyone has probably thought about it one time or another. So then she was like, you want me to call 911? I was like, absolutely not. I do not want police coming to get me. So I self-admitted into a hospital, which, again, I didn't know where to go to get help, and evidently this is an area where American healthcare just sucks. If you have to go to the hospital to get mental health care and check into the ER, there's a problem. So I went in there, and then they referred me into a program with intense therapy, and there was a clinical psychiatric nurse there that could prescribe medicine and all that. So I participated in this program, and when I came out, a few days, maybe a week afterward, I had another subpoena, or another command to go to court. My mother had the nerve and audacity, after all she did, to slap me with a child support hearing. My mother was suing me for child support. These people, it's not like they paid me anything to raise my kid. If they went on trips and stuff, they'll pay for him when they want to take him on their trip, but I paid for everything for him. So for her to turn around, take my kid, lie to do it, and then, basically put me in the hospital, to come out and get slapped in the face to pay my fucking mother child support to raise the son she stole from me. How fucked up is that? So, granted, I stayed with my things to try to keep myself sane, and fortunately there's been one person or two people in my life that I could rely on. Just they were really wonderful and sources of strength for me, considering I don't have relatives that are family. And I consider my biological relatives, I consider them relatives. I don't consider them family. No one should ever have a mother do to me, should do to anyone what she did to me. So they're not family, but the people that I consider family are two very close friends of mine, and they've been wonderful. So anyways, I basically got extorted out of, paying child support. I earn a fair living. I do well for myself. I raised my boy on one income, and I owned a home. Actually, I owned two homes. I had one as a rental property. It was an investment, but you know, because I made good money, I guess I'm supposed to live off of a different budget. I have a very expensive mortgage for the house I live in, and I could make ends meet, but based on the income, they wanted some crazy amount of money for me to be on the hook for, because they use just a math equation, and they don't assume you have a big house, I guess. So for me to be able to afford it, I literally would have to have kind of moved into an apartment. But good-natured mother agreed to give me the family discount. So they wouldn't negotiate with me whatsoever, even though I told them what I could afford. Didn't care. It gave me about $150 off, which isn't much. You know, barely 15%. So, yeah, that sucked. That sucked a lot. You know, I got a dog, though. That's been helping. It's very therapeutic, and I feel better in my shoes. I carry a lot of rage and anger and frustration and disgust at my mother with me, but I try not to let that out. You know, that's my problem. But I hate that she's now made me feel this way, and makes me carry this, you know, this resentment. You know, what kind of family do I have? Not a good one. So, anyways, I get to see my son every other weekend. And I chose not to see him this weekend because he was pretty rude to me last weekend. And whatever he does, by the way, as you can tell from my story, especially if you have parents like mine, he can claim anything. Abuse. If he throws a temper tantrum, and Chase does throw temper tantrums. He's not a mature boy. He's only 15 and a half. You know, and he's recently learned he can do whatever he wants and he can get his way. Grandma will rescue him from having to grow up. So, he throws a fit at my house. They send my older brother to come, make sure he babysits me as a dad. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Ridiculous what my family is like. So, I needed a break. So I took this weekend off. I mean, I haven't talked to him. You know, he's just disrespectful. But I love him. I will always love him. I can't imagine ever doing to him what my mother did to me. So I figure, you know, he's going to grow up and learn, especially when he gets kids of his own, you know, that she was totally, horribly wrong for what she did. And that he was wrong for, I guess, whatever stories he told her. That's one other thing I should make clear. My mother, my brother, my family, none of them ever came up and discussed with me what my son was saying. And he said stuff that was provably untrue. My mom repeated those things in court because she never, ever tried to find out if it was true or not. At least for her, she could say in her mind she wasn't lying because she was willfully ignorant to not check facts. And some of these claims could have easily been fact-checked. She just chose not to do it. And the courts just didn't want to deal with, you know, this kid who, her attorney, my parents' attorney, you know, told him basically, you make sure you tell the judge. If you have him forced to come back home, you tell him you're going to run away. So he did it. He sold that. And the judge asked me, well, why shouldn't I, you know, he doesn't want to live with you. I'm like, that's not his mother. She did not raise him. I raised him. He's like, well, he doesn't want, you know, they're not on equal footing. So anyways, like I said before, the judge awarded primary physical custody to my bitch-ass mother. And now I get to see my kid, the one that I raised alone for years and years and years, until he was a teenager. Now I get to see him every other weekend for all my hard work and being a good dad to him. And a single dad, you know? So, anyways, I just wanted to share that, just to get it off my chest. So, yeah, here he is with me. I actually wore this to the child support hearing, which my parents don't care. They, you know, they just wanted money. They definitely get more than whatever it would cost. I would love to have gotten that type of check just to have Chase. But I'm not that type of person. Evidently they are. So anyways, and if anyone does need, someone to talk to, if you're feeling suicidal, or even if you're just in a deep, dark place, please feel free to talk to people about it. And if you don't want people to know, you can always call that suicide prevention hotline. Obviously no one's going to know that you called except you, and they don't know who you are. So that's what I wanted to share. I wanted to get that off my chest. I love my son so much, and I miss him every single day. It's painful. I hurt all the time. But I'm getting up in the mornings and doing my work and putting in my hours and taking care of my house, and I'm having a new dog that I take care of, and he'll come around. So I'll work through it. So thanks for listening, and hope everyone out there is doing better than me. Take care.